You won't believe this, but there have been to the Jim Jones trial. Even while everyone thought the trial was about Jim Jones, who would have Cameron would tell the world Chrissy's secret? The surprise is that Jim Jones may now take advantage of the secret Chrissy attempted to conceal from the world, which is set to be made public. You read correctly. There is more to this case than just Jim Jones. Concerning Chrissy's reprisal as well. What will happen in this drama next is leaving the courthouse and entering the streets. You are totally wrong if you believe to be just another trial. The repercussions are unthinkable. As the world pauses and the courthouse doors open, all eyes are on the year's most important trial, the one that has the potential to alter the course of history. Cameron dropped a bombshell in the midst of all of this mayhem, and believe me, nobody saw it coming. The reputation of Jim Jones could be ruined by the accusations made against him. Despite Cameron's reputation for speaking his mind and stirring controversy, what he disclosed about Chrissy was unexpected. The courtroom suddenly became the focal point of a much bigger problem that was initially only supposed to be about Jim Jones and his criminal charges. No one has ever ventured to convey the narrative Cameron made up about Chrissy disclosing something that no one knew. Let me tell you about the problem. Jim Jones was the center of attention during this trial. They were aware of the numerous dubious activities he had committed, the legal troubles facing his empire, and the harm being done to his name, his financial security, and asked questions, transactions, and, of course, the notorious Dipet reputation that Cameron and the others had established from the start. But the trial saw an unexpected development. The court instantly turned its attention away from the charges against Jim Jones and towards something else when Cameron, in the most surprising move, chose to reveal Chrissy Lamon's secret. We never realized how big it was. What could be worse than the drama between Jim and Cam? I am aware of your thoughts. That's when the tale really starts to get out of hand. Many people know that Chrissy Lamine, the reality TV actress and longtime girlfriend of Jim Jones, has been hiding something all along. What did Cameron disclose in court? He started a chain of events that left everyone stunned. The world learned about Chrissy's secret and dark side. Prior to Cameron accusing her of acting in a dubious manner herself. The tension of the courtroom was evident from the gasps of the onlookers. Because Chrissy had spent so much time with Jim, she was accused of playing both sides of the argument. He disclosed that Chrissy had been secretly working with some extremely powerful individuals. People Jim was unaware of who had the ability to ruin everything for everyone. Not just Jim, by engaging in questionable financial activities. However, why now? Why did Cameron decide to make this information public during the trial of Jim Jones? Was he merely trying to draw attention to the machines of the team? Or was there a sinister motive at work? Let's take a moment to reflect. Cameron, Jim Jones, and the rest of Dipset have been at the vanguard of the music industry for years. Fractures were starting to show beneath the surface. Many acknowledged their capacity to establish trends, produce memorable events, and forge bonds and dedication to one another. Jim and Cameron had a complex relationship, and for years, Cameron had kept quiet about the internal conflict. But he saw a chance during his trial to expose Chrissy's role in something even more sinister that could have played a part in Jim's death. Nor was it just about Chrissy's private life. Chrissy's feelings regarding all of this must be a mystery. Was she taken by surprise? Was she aware of this tactic all along? Or is this story more complex than anyone wants to admit? Is no longer just a trial. So let's stand back and think about the implications of Cameron's bombshell before we get ahead of ourselves. More information about the criminal groups and the persons operating in the background was made public by Cameron's disclosure. Everything could be ruined by this discovery. The ultimate public test of loyalty, betrayal, and secrets is at stake here. To what degree was Chrissy involved in this scam, we must wonder. Who else participated in these dubious activities? Was Jim Jones unaware that he was merely a cog in a bigger machine? What this means for Jim and Chrissy's relationship is even less apparent. Will this trial lead to a permanent split that impacts their private and public lives? Should Jim have been involved in was Chrissy behind the scenes in a scandal? Chrissy Lampkin, Jim Jones's rock for years. Kay now found herself at the center of a tempest. She never expected, as the world watched in disbelief as Cameron's bombshell revelation sent the courtroom into a frenzy. We haven't even begun to look into the many questions that are circulating. But I can assure you that things will get much more explosive as we examine the ramifications of Cameron's confession in court. Is when things get really nasty. So let's dissect it. After being portrayed as the loyal friend who had stood with her lover through thick and thin, Chrissy was abruptly the target of grave charges. In this case, Cameron was more than just fabricating tales about Chrissy's purported connections to dangerous individuals and real contacts, the kind of people who could ruin careers with a simple phone call. The accusation was simple. Chrissy had been secretly collaborating with somehow, and she had become close to the people from Jim Jones's past who had objectives and were not above exploiting circumstances to accomplish them. These people, were more than just acquaintances. They were involved in the murky realm of criminal activity, corruption, and deceit. Even more startling was the fact that Jim was ignorant of Chrissy's actions. According to Cameron, Jim had been kept in the dark about her dealings with these questionable people and the secrets she had been hiding from him. After being blinded by love and loyalty, the truth was ultimately revealed. Everyone but Jim had been aware of Chrissy's covert existence. Before we get too far, though, let's pause to think about why Jim's longtime partner, Chrissy, would suddenly start meeting someone who could destroy him. The inquiries were becoming more pressing. Was there a more sinister motivation at play? Or was this all part of a botched scheme? Now, let's talk about how the public has responded to all of this. Supporters, the media, and even those closest to the celebrity begin to distrust the fan base when that kind of behavior occurs. What do you believe the supporters were saying? Discovered that Chrissy was purportedly complicit in this matter? They had good reason to feel betrayed. Rapper Jim had always been loyal and trustworthy, but he was suddenly sucked into something far more significant than he could have ever dreamed. Many admirers, according to those with knowledge of the matter, were accusing Chrissy of using Jim as a tool to further her agenda. They had followed their every move on reality TV because they thought they were the ideal couple. Once adoring fans were horrified and distraught to hear that she had been exploiting Jim's name and notoriety to advance her career while surreptitiously working against him in the background. They pondered whether it was an indication of genuine loyalty. In addition, the media were continuously altering the story. Others accused Chrissy of being a manipulator who exploited Jim's name and popularity for her personal benefit. While others were quick to label her a gold digger, the issue is that no one was aware of the story's precise nature. Every new element that surfaced seemed to add complexity to the story, which seemed to be changing hourly. But this is where things went awry, since Cameron did much more than just accuse Chrissy. Unavoidably, he started to reveal some unsettling details about Jim Jones's past. According to Cameron, Jim wasn't not only unaware of the problems, but also unaware of Chrissy's actions. Cameron claimed that Jim had spent years hanging out with people who were taking advantage of him, making choices and having questionable financial dealings. Some people didn't care much for Jim, but they were keen to utilize him to achieve their own covert objectives. Cameron made the bold decision to select names that aren't typically connected to Jim Jones. These names were linked to illegal organizations that functioned covertly and out of sight, in addition to businesses. In addition to their work engagement, the Jim had a personal bond with these people. Cameron claimed that Jim had been surrounded by individuals who had been deceiving him and bringing him down a dangerous path, an issue that was actually right outside his door. The reality that Cameron even more striking is the fact that they went into detail to explain Jim's level of dedication rather than just summarizing these ties. Whether it was ignorance, denial, or a total disdain for the repercussions, Jim had been engaged in these behaviors for years without ever realizing it. Let's pause now to consider that Jim was now facing the consequences of choices, which involved the same individuals Chrissy had been secretly working with. It's one thing to know what was happening, but it's another to realize that the people you trusted the most and were closest to were the ones who led you into this situation. According to Cameron, Chrissy's treachery was both personal and professional. And that Jim was the one who had fallen for a game he didn't know he was playing and been duped by love. The worst part is that the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined, and it became clear that there had been additional wrongdoings as the courtroom drama progressed. It became clear that the stakes were much bigger than a personal disagreement as the courtroom drama progressed. The industry was watching. The fan base was in turmoil. Their entire empire was being decimated, and the legal repercussions were just now starting to come to light. It was more than Jim Jones's career being in jeopardy or Chrissy Lumpkin being exposed for her illegal activities. Actually, the reason why people are avoiding this topic is it was a ticking time bomb for their own lives, not just a personal issue. Careers. If you thought this would be a passing trend, you should reconsider. The world was not only watching a couple's personal issues when Cameron broke the news, they were also witnessing the collapse of an entire business. More than just a rapper, Jim Jones was a trailblazer in the hip-hop movement and a cultural icon. Now he found himself in the middle of a legal nightmare that would permanently alter his life. Lawyers were on high alert since the charges were actionable and not just hearsay. Jim's previous connections and the suspicious individuals purportedly managing the funds. What this meant for Jim and Chrissy, the most evident outcome was that they could be subject to severe legal Rs. And we all know I've been exploring like Brave. And we all know I've been exploring that movie. I've been exploring that path. Jim's previous connections and the suspicious end degrees among with praise with trapeze. What are they with? With thinking with CV's self. RCCCY 17. I do see find way to call on with CCC sis at 3 HSE sevway at we said core you we and we to see to cop to they like I see we to see to sigh we to we you say see if cook you with you to see we you decide is to do with for kind you kiss to see to if you give you if I talk is to see with the way state you can and it I have if I thought Action. Consequences. We are talking about the government inquiries that began to surface in relation to this matter. Jim's previous connections were previously known to law enforcement, particularly following Cameron's startling disclosures. Federal agents were investigating racketeering, money laundering, and perhaps even more serious criminal activity, according to people familiar with the inquiry. Jim's relationships with the wrong people and his disdain for the warning signs may have led to years in prison if everything had gone according to plan, regardless of whether he was actively involved in any unlawful conduct. Incorrect. But there was more going on here. Long-term partners were splitting up, labels were creating obstacles, rumor was rife, and the industry had already started to turn against them. Let's start by discussing the consequences of this dispute. The consequences of this study were companies, networks, brands that had been backing Jim and Chrissy for years were now forced to make the tough choice. Should we keep supporting them when their entire reputation is on the line? When calls from partners and sponsors started to trickle in, reality sank in for people like Jim Jones, who was previously invincible in the hip-hop industry. Many were ending their partnerships out of fear that public opinion will eventually be felt on a large scale. Indeed, rumors circulated partnerships and joint ventures. Everyone around him could see that some of the industry's greatest stars were under strain. Chrissy, however, was not much better. She had already been portrayed by the media as the ultimate villain, and her supposed secret life was overshadowing all of her years of support and dedication to Jim, the public lost faith in the love story and started accusing her of manipulating Jim for gain and using their relationship as a launching pad for her career. It was an agonizing sequence of events. She was now viewed by many who had formerly lauded her strength as a cold-blooded, crafty individual who had been playing a game for years. Furthermore, let's not even discuss Cameron the instant had talked. The drama grew more intense. Fans, the media, and hip-hop culture were all waiting for him to make a statement. Cameron, known for his scathing remarks and uncompromising demeanor, wasn't giving up. He was. It was unclear if Cameron was acting in revenge or to shield Jim from a reality that he couldn't comprehend. Let's look at the possibilities. Jim's case was more complex. Due to his connections to known criminals, he might be charged indirectly. Jim may not have realized he was part of a criminal network, but he still had to deal with a sobering fact that ignorance is not a valid defense. But sometimes the law doesn't give a damn. Chrissy might have been charged with conspiracy, fraud, and possibly racketeering if she had been with the wrong group. She might spend years behind bars for these serious crimes, which weren't petty offenses. Once a hero to many, the rapper had to face the fallout from dishonesty, deceit, and secrecy. The true question, though, is whether they can bounce back. From this, after everything that has come to light, will Jim and Chrissy be able to move on with their relationships, professions, and lives? Or is this the end of an era? However, one thing is for sure, Jim Jones's name will always be connected to this trial, this dispute, and the latter findings with one of the most startling tales in the history of hip-hop. Fans are left to pick up the pieces while the story, the courtroom drama, and the legal battles go on. We are left with the aftermath, but only time will tell. There is no going back now that the truth has been revealed. The question of the day is whether Jim Jones and Chrissy Lynn's bankrupt company will mean the end of their well-known careers, or if the scandal itself won't be nearly as devastating as the legal fallout. Above all, to what extent is this fallout actually present? Please leave. This is a developing story. What are your thoughts? Was Cameron's choice to destroy Jim's career premeditated? Or is there more to this significant disagreement than meets the eye? Please remember to subscribe, like, and share this video if these figures shock you so you can keep up with all the breaking news as we keep finding more disturbing tales like this one. To ensure that you don't miss any incredible moments, set alerts. I want to thank you for your time, but there is much more to come. The real world is rarely stranger than fiction in the realm of celebrity drama. So be sure to keep an eye out for the next one.